think we are live, sir. I believe we are live. Let's see. Yep, we are live. Say something. Make sure I got good audio with you. Say something real quick.
Check.
Yep, we're up. I didn't trust my work. It's the Hat Boys today.
That's it. Tracy gonna be mad. He just cut me up yesterday.
Well, everyone, welcome to episode 4 of the Borderland Sports Report as we wrap up another night of football here in the Borderland. And as always, I mean, we had some really good games. So
Things
we'll get
definitely shook themselves out.
They definitely did. Had a lot of teams that really made some headway and kind of really stretched their feet a little bit. And then some games where teams needed wins and they got those wins.
Oh yeah.
Specifically that Andrews Hanks game. Andrews needed that win.
That was a pivotal game. We had talked about that last week. The winner of that game was going to, secure that 4th playoff spot. You don't really want to make too bold of predictions, but I mean, everybody knows Conatillo, Chapin, and Del Valle is going to be the top 3 teams in that district. So everybody else is really playing for that 4th spot. So that was a pivotal game in that district.
Definitely. Keep talking, Coach. I got one thing. We live.
Sorry,
Too. This is crazy.
We was having a few technical difficulties. So yeah, this week has wrapped itself up. There's been some pretty big games. El Dorado has continued to do what El Dorado has apparently going to be doing this year. We had a pretty big game in District 1 5A Division 1 between Parkland and America's High School, and neither one of those teams have found a win this year going into the week. And although every team in that district is going to make the playoffs, seeding is very important. So that game was an important game in that district. Obviously, somebody had to come out ahead, and it seemed to be a pretty good game based off the score. Del Valle continued to be Del Valle. They won pretty easily against Jefferson. That's to be expected by the team that we both feel is the best team in El Paso.
Definitely. I mean, Del Valle just they flexed a little bit. I think the backup might have got a lot of minutes tonight. I don't think Fetty's numbers were awesome, but it's because they've been beating the brakes off people lately.
Honestly, that's something I kind of want to speak on. We still out just a second ago. I was talking about El Dorado, and this could be said about Del Valle as well. As being on a team that's that good really does it hinders a kid's stats.
Yeah.
And I'll give some specific examples in a little bit as we get into it. But it's funny that you say that because it hinders their stats if they don't get to play a full game.
Well, you know what though? I think it's more so going to impact Fetty more than it is Ray Ray. So Ray gonna get his. They gonna get it, man. He's gonna get his numbers.
Yeah,
Ray gonna eat.
You say that, but remember this kid missed the season last year. That's in the back of his head, and this is his money year. So I can see as a coach, I've been on both sides of that. You want to get your kids their stats, but you want to keep them healthy too. So it's funny. 2015 we played a game against Coronado. I had a kid rush for 464 yards. You don't get a game like that unless it's close.
Yeah.
We won 27-24, and Josh Fields wouldn't have got 464 yards if the game wasn't close. He would have got pulled.
I can see that. I can see that part. Let's bring up these scores real quick. Then we got the top 10. So these are all final scores, if I'm not mistaken. Which game? Let's look at this Coronado and Franklin game for a second. That Coronado-Franklin game, Thursday night, tit for tat, back and forth. I watched the end of that game, and we was talking about it before we came up, and it was, Coronado had the ball on about the 42-yard line with a minute and some change left. And I say they got greedy. I don't know what the quarterback saw, but he tried to get greedy and didn't get enough air in the ball. If he'd have thrown it into the end zone, it would have been a touchdown. But it was intercepted on the 2.
Yeah, I mean, you don't ever know what's going on. You don't know what the call was. Obviously they were trying to win. Nobody's ever playing to lose. So they might have just made a mistake. The game. It's funny because it was one of the only games that anybody played any defense, apparently, because defense is not a thing anymore, apparently, in El Paso. So there was some defense played in that game, though. It was a pretty low-scoring game, and, it was a rivalry game. So you kind of can throw the whole stat book out the window because, they play with a different level of intensity in that game. So Franklin came out on top, but it was a good game.
It definitely was a good game.
Wilson had a good game. I think he rushed for 170 yards and threw for 160, 330 yards total offense for that kid, and that's a good day for him.
I think it was $180 is what he ran for.
Okay.
He put up some big numbers. And it kind of, I just, and I'll jump back on here in a second. Other top 10 games, the Isleta-Austin game. Isleta was up late in that game, and Austin won at the end. They scored a touchdown and won at the end. And then I think the other one, we talked about the Hanks-Andrews game. I want to kind of touch on this Chapin team for a second. And we kind of brushed on him and when we first started that first week, but there's a lot of talent on that roster.
I'm going to tell you, Chapin is hands down the most talented team in El Paso. Athletic-wise, again, new coach, he's still finding his way, and I'm sure he'll do a good job finding his way. But athletically, they check the box at every position.
Yes.
So when they figure it out, I think they're as good as Canutillo, as good as Del Valle, depending on how long it's going to take them to figure it out. But athletically, they've got what it takes.
And that first game when they played, I think their first game was against Eastwood. Was it
Franklin?
Eastwood? Franklin. You could see some flashes of it. Like their first drive, they went down the field, scored, and you could see. I was like, man, speed does kill.
I mean, no doubt. So they play Franklin. Franklin has 2,000 more students in their school than Chapin does.
Yes.
So I think a lot of people, when you start discussing those things, they forget things like that. There's a big discrepancy in the size of school between those two guys, and the fact that they were able to go out with a limited school population and still make a good showing. I mean, that speaks volumes for that team and that program.
For sure, but I mean, the last 2 weeks, you've seen that Chapin team kind of flex their get out there and they flex a little bit and kind of show what they're made of. And I mean, you can see, at the skill position, I think top to bottom, they rack up with a lot of the top teams here in the city for sure.
I would say they've got 3 guys on the roster that should be Division I guys. Whether all 3 of those guys go Division I, that's yet to be determined. We know one has multiple offers, but there's definitely 2 more guys that are Division I guys on that roster, and that I guess the rest of the season is going to determine whether those guys go.
Yeah, and before we get into the rest of the scores, we were sitting there talking about the 2026 class. Everybody made a big boo-ha-ha about last year's class and how many kids went out, and even the years before. And we had this conversation. I personally think that there's at least 10 to 15 D1 players in that 2026 class. Now, like you said, whether or not it happens, that's a whole different ball game, because at the end of the day, you got coaches that are I think what happens sometimes is people forget that teams, I'm really trying to fill a need.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times they're trying to fill needs, and if you have what I need, then it perfect marriage. But if you don't, you get overlooked sometimes. And especially when you start looking at like the skilled positions, right? I'm not going to say you can throw a rock and get a wide receiver on every corner in America, but that's become the sexy position in football. And so you got more and more athletes now who would be playing other positions are now lining up playing wide receiver. You got some 6'3", 6'5" guys playing wide receiver now. And then you flip it on the other side of the ball, and you got the same thing in DBs now.
It's definitely the most competitive position as far as getting scholarships at the Division I level. You know, I can break down El Paso recruiting for you pretty simply. A coach can go to Dallas and Houston and see 400 Division I kids.
Yes.
And they're going to have to spend the same money to come to El Paso, and they'll see 20 Division I kids.
Yes.
So at the end of the day, you know, college football is a business, and they need to go where they're going to get bang for their buck. So, you know, I've got a lot of good friends that coach in the Dallas area. I've got a good friend at Duncanville, DeSoto. These are friends of mine. Like, I can pick up the phone and call them. And the difference between recruiting here and recruiting there is what happens there is the bubble kids get recruited.
Yes.
Here, the bubble kids don't get recruited. The no-brainers, they're going to get their scholarships. It's the bubble kids that end up going to Division II, Division III, NAIA, JUCO here because there's not enough eyes on them, because there's not enough traffic coming through. There's not enough hype. So, you know, in that scenario, that's where the high school coaches' relationships go a long way to get those bubble kids to Division I. And if you don't have a relationship with these college coaches, why would they trust you when you say, hey, you need to take a chance on this guy?
It's true. And I always tell people all the time, you know, at the end of the day, recruiting is about 95% relationships.
Absolutely. 100%.
95% relationships. And those are relationships that these coaches have built with people that they trust.
Yeah.
And so to break that, I always tell people, especially if you're looking at that Division I level, if you're going into your senior year and you haven't been recruited as a Division I athlete,
you're not a Division I athlete.
Well, not only that, the chances of, because you think about it.
There's no money left. They're already looking at freshmen and sophomores.
Because think about it, right? For the last 2 to 3 years, let's not even talk about the money investment. Let's talk about my time investment that I put into recruiting and talking to family and friends and this young man or this young woman for the last 2 or 3 years. And now you come along and you got to try to break into that, and that's hard.
Yeah, no, very difficult. And
it's really hard. And so that's why you see so many kids here end up at Division IIs, NAIAs, Division IIIs, because
and it's okay. You're going to go play ball. You're going to go get an education. And, you know, you're going to play ball at a high level. And anymore, the Division IIs and the NAIAs are really the JUCO of old. That's where you're going to go put it on film so that you can get in that transfer portal and go play on TV on Saturdays.
But it comes down to those relationships. These kids are the kids and the parents are trying to build these relationships too late.
Yeah.
And so that's why you see the Fetties and the Singletons and all these kids that have these offers now, because guess what they did? They went to camps on a college campus where these schools could see them, and they started building relationships.
Yeah. They got on somebody's list early so that they can watch.
Yeah.
Because if they don't know your name, they're not going to watch.
Definitely not going to do it. Definitely not going to do it. I'm going to get off my soapbox now. Let's get back to these scores. Let's see. So Americas comes out with the win in Parkland over Parkland. Parkland's now 0-4, I think.
0-5.
0-5. That's a tough situation to be in. But again, they still haven't started district play. So
no, that is district play.
Oh, that's right.
This is their first district game.
That is the first district game. That is correct.
It is definitely time to sound the alarms at Parkland.
Yes.
You know, that's not a situation that Parkland's used to being in. 1-3 is not a situation that Americas is used to being in. But I told you last week, we were talking about that district. No team in that district won a game except for El Dorado in non-district play.
Yeah.
So really, it's wide open in that district, and slots 2 through 4 are up for grabs. And Americas, they had a positive outcome tonight to try to get that spot number 2. But I mean, I think it's pretty clear cut that El Dorado is going to be the team to beat in that district. and they're all going to make the playoffs. But what seed you're going in is what's determined in that district.
Yes.
So America's, they did what they're supposed to do. So they're going to go prepare for next week, and Parkland's going to go figure it out.
Then the other game is that the Eastlake Montwood. Eastlake pulls off a big win. That was a big win. They needed that win. They truly needed that win over Montwood. And then that Da Vinci Emmanuel score, that's not right. That is not right. I overlooked that one when we were putting it in the finals, but that was not right. And then Irvin pulls out the big upset. In my opinion, the big upset over Bowie tonight.
Bowie's been playing well. Irvin, they got a lot of excitement, a lot of hype around them. You got the new coach, Coach Elliott. It's kind of wild. I feel super old. I actually coached against him when he was at Andrus. So,
wow.
That makes me feel a little bit old as a coach.
Oh, wow.
But, he's got a lot of hype. He's got them guys going in the right direction, and a lot of times that's what it's about. And, when you can match those X's and O's up with the hype, then you start having some success.
Okay. But I mean, that's the wrap-up of the scores. What's on your mind, Coach? Other than was it the battle? Is it the Battle of I-25? Is that what it's called?
What was it? NMSU UNM?
Yes. Is that what it's called?
I think so. It is. I'm partial to UNM. We've sent several kids to go play at UNM as a coach, and I never sent a kid to go play at NMSU, so I'm partial to UNM. But NMSU is playing good football right now, and you got they got a new coach, former coach at UNLV, former head coach at Bishop Gorman at the high school level. He actually has some El Paso ties as well. His niece went to America's High School when I coached there. She was a softball player, Division I softball player. So he's continued the momentum that they've had from last year, and I believe both of those games are going to be tough games for UTEP, and I believe UTEP has a tough game coming up in Sam Houston State.
Yes.
Sam Houston State was a FCS perennial power that has decided to make the move up, and they're still playing good football. So, I believe UTEP is going to have a struggle game for them to try to get their first win. We'll be rooting for them.
I'm going to say, well, some of us will be.
I'll be rooting for them. I'm an El Pasoan.
I live here. I just think that, and I don't want to get on UTEP again, but I just think that they don't sell the city enough in their recruiting process.
Not without a doubt, they don't.
Because I just think that they could get so much more recruits here if they sold the city as part of that package.
Well, you and I talked about this last week, and selling the city, yes. I'm going to tell you, I brought up this a week ago. Mike Leach gets to Texas Tech. Texas Tech is a laughingstock. They're terrible. They're no good. Mike Leach goes, and he does a great job recruiting, and he sells Lubbock. I would live in El Paso 10 times out of 10 over Lubbock 100% of the time. It would take so much money for me to live in Lubbock. I think it's easy to sell El Paso. El Paso is an awesome city, very friendly, very open. They're hungry for success at football.
Yes.
At UTEP.
I don't think people understand how, like, I'm going to go back to when Southern Utah came here, how packed the Sun Bowl was, right? When UTEP is winning, the Sun Bowl is like that every weekend.
Yeah.
Every weekend.
And so, it's selling the city, but, we also talked about the recruiting side of it, in that when you recruit at a mid-major, and especially at a mid-major that has not done so well, you have to change your recruiting tactics.
Oh, yeah.
And I brought up TCU in the early 2000s, Texas Tech in the early 2000s. Neither one of those programs were very good. They changed their recruiting tactics. Let me tell you what these guys did. And I had a first-hand conversation with Coach Leach. He said, well, We went out and got everybody's quarterback. I said, well, why, coach? He said, well, most of the time in high school, the quarterbacks were the best players on the team, and they're the smartest players on the team. So we went and recruited everybody's quarterbacks, and we taught them how to play DB, linebacker, wide receiver, tight end. We taught them how to play a bunch of different positions. So when you're at a mid-major and a mid-major that's not very successful, you're not going to get the top 10 recruits in every position.
You're sure not.
So you got to figure out another way to go out and get good players. And, you know, that Mike Leach, that TCU, that style of going out and getting everybody's quarterbacks, it panned out for those guys. And they end up getting some good guys and end up going to the next level to go play in the NFL that were quarterbacks in high school.
Yep. And you know, it makes a lot of sense. It really does. You see, there's a lot of former quarterbacks playing a lot of different positions. But I mean, you know, but for me, you know, I gotta do one shout out. Everybody sees this Howard hat on. It's not because I went to school at Howard, because I did not go to school at Howard. I went to school at NC State University. But Howard gets all my money these days because my son goes there, and he's a member of the marching band. And
what instrument?
He plays the bass.
Okay.
And the boy stays on TV. He stays on TV. Whenever they play a game and that camera finds the band, he ends up in that camera somehow.
I think it's awesome that the HBCUs are getting so much airtime.
Well, but here's the thing, right? So what people didn't know before that was happening was a lot of times they go do more than just the games, right? So, for example, last year, my son goes up to Oregon to Nike headquarters for the band to play. They had a unique opportunity to start the season, to start the year. It didn't happen, but they got offered for the drum line to be in a movie. But it got shut down by the school for whatever reason. I have my thoughts on that, but I'll keep them to myself because they still getting my money right now, and I don't need him having no issues. But I say all that to say this, they do so much. They played halftime for the New York Giants. And so they do all these other events because they're always requested to come do things.
Mm-hmm.
And they put in as much time and then sometimes as more, because it's what time now? It's 11. Okay, so he's probably been done with practice. I don't think they practiced this week. They gave him they practiced tonight. They gave him yesterday off. But they're out there practicing at like 11:30 at night.
Yeah, now the show bands at the HBCUs definitely put in a lot of work. They have boot camp, just like the football teams do, and it's a big deal. For those of you that don't know anything about HBCU bands, go Google it, look it up.
That's the moneymaker.
It's not even just about what was the movie Drumline. It's not even just about that movie. Like, it's a real deal. It's the real thing. My daddy went to a HBCU in Alabama A&M, and with John Stallworth. He played with John Stallworth.
But I say all that to say this. You know, I just want to give a shout out. Howard goes up to Princeton. I think this is like the third time they've been in New Jersey in the last month. Mm-hmm. But shout out to my son, my namesake. His mama named him that, but they go to Princeton, and he'll end up on TV again this weekend. But good luck to them as they travel. But, you know, I have to say this, that junior year, 4.0 GPA.
Nice.
He's been on the dean's list every year that he's been there. So he's doing his thing while still doing the marching band thing. But, yeah, he's definitely putting in that. But, you know, man, it's been another great weekend. We didn't have – well, I guess we had one big top 10 matchup with that happened this week. We didn't have – like last week we probably had like 2 or 3. But, hey, man, it's been another good show.
I mean, I think we need to kind of like – you know, we always talk about putting these names of these kids out here, you know, for college coaches to start. You know, let's highlight some of the guys that need to be looked at. You know, let's start in the Northeast. You know, the Milton kid at quarterback at Andress, sophomore, doing great.
Yes.
You know, the Milton kid. We got obviously Devion Singleton at Chapin. We got Brent Hallman at Chapin. We got Dallas Tucker at Chapin. You know, everybody knows Jacob Fetty at Del Valle. They got a running back too that's pretty good, Manny Fuller. He's going to Utah.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Cameron Johnson at America. We hadn't heard too much about him this year. Obviously, they're not having a whole lot of success, but he's one of those guys that we talked about being part of that 10 Division I kids in El Paso. We got Ernie Powers at Franklin. Ben Wilson is probably one of the names at Coronado, probably one of the names that you should know that you don't know. He's a junior, great athlete. This kid can do it all over the field. He would be one of those guys we talk about. You go get everybody's quarterback. He's one of those guys because he's going to play something else at the next level. Everybody knows Ray Estrada, at El Dorado, but let's talk about they got a receiver named Jadarius Saunders. They used to call him Little CD Lamb because when he had dreadlocks, so we've talked about the kid at Eastwood a little bit, their receiver. I forgot his name off the top of my head right now, but he's had some games this year.
Yes.
As well as, they got a DB named Jaden James that people probably don't know about, but he's a great athlete, and doing things on the defensive side of the ball. So there's some talent out here. And as we go through the season, I'm going to research some more names and put these names out there. And,
are we at the midway point yet? Not yet.
Yeah, week 5. Well, it's 11 weeks. So
so next week, probably like around week 7, because we'll start putting out while I'm thinking about it, we will be doing the banquet, the BSR football banquet. So this year, we're going to do something a little different. We didn't do the preseason banquet, and we did that for a reason. So last year, we did a preseason banquet with volleyball and football together, and then we just did the football banquet. So this year, we're going to give every sport their own banquet. So we'll have the volleyball banquet. I think right now it's scheduled for 30 November. And then the 14th will be the football banquet. So that's Saturday. So mark your calendars for that. We'll start putting that information out. But as we start getting closer to that, you'll start seeing us pulling out players for Player of the Year, getting those votes and things going, and start identifying players for.
I think it's a short list.
Yeah. Player of the Year list is short, but then you get into the positions, right?
Yeah.
That's quarterback, running back. So I think it's probably about 15.
I think both of those are short lists too.
To be honest, I think the wide receiver one might be short too.
Yeah, getting pretty close.
Yeah, and so putting together all those and then honoring these student athletes. So that information will be coming out here in the next 2 weeks to get ready for that. I just gotta sit down and do it, man. Sit down and do it, and we'll have the banquets and get going. 11:20. Somebody gotta get hot.
I do.
Get hot. So but folks, we just thank you guys for tuning in. This has been week 4. This has been the 4th episode, but week 5 of the Borderland Sports Report. We'll catch you guys here next week. Appreciate you, Coach.
Appreciate you.
As always. That's it.